go over here in case somebody shows up. Just sit in the corner.
Okay. Hey guys, today we're doing a quick workshop on the levels of questioning. One of the things that we've noticed in group discussions and discussions of literature and discussions of the textbook is that one of our default things that we like to do is we like to get into the land of what if questions. What if questions are more fun to talk about because there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer. However, what that does is that keeps us from getting at the truth and the heart of what we're supposed to be learning about. So today we're going to talk about levels of questioning so that you can understand kind of our expectations as you are creating questions, both for your textbook reading and then as we dive into more literature in the future. So I want you to think about a Disney movie, and you can pause this workshop at any point. I'm going to use Cinderella as my example, so choose something other than Cinderella. Once you've got that chosen, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 levels. So level 1 questions, I call them basic questions. They are questions that can be answered by facts contained in the text or by information accessible in other resources. There will always be a right or wrong answer to these level 1 questions. Typically, they start with who, what, when, and where. So if I'm going to my example of Cinderella, what were Cinderella's slippers made out of? Answer simple, glass. How did Cinderella get to the ball? In a carriage that her fairy godmother transformed from a pumpkin, right? So those questions are really simple. They're good for basic knowledge level understanding, right? You can look at the text, you can make sure that you're understanding what you're reading. But when we're talking about discussion, they don't have a ton of value because they don't allow you to get to anything deeper. They don't talk about the symbolism or the significance or why the author chose this detail over that detail. So those are your level 1 questions. Level 2 questions are textually implicit. And what that means is that they require both the text and analysis. So you have to look at the text, find the answer, and then make meaning out of that answer. So this is questions that typically start with something like, what if? What is the difference between? Why? So why does Cinderella's stepmother care whether or not she goes to the ball? The thing with these level 2 questions is there could be multiple answers, right? I could say, oh, she's jealous. And there's stuff in the text that would help me answer that question. Of course she's jealous, right? I could also talk that she's like a really good mother and she wants her daughters to have all of these opportunities. Those are 2 reasons that I could pull from the text. And it gives you an opportunity to discuss, like, what is the most significant reason for her? Next question is, why does everything turn back to the way it was except for the glass slipper? I don't know, but I could look at the text and come up with a couple of different reasons. The third one, why don't the stepsisters like Cinderella? Again, I could say that they're jealous of her, or, I could get into the feelings of it, and they could, wish that they had her life or anything like that. You can come up with answers that come from the text, but that require you to analyze the text and talk about why it matters. Level 2 questions are my favorite because they require both the text and analysis. Level 3 questions are the questions that are good for discussions. They're more open-ended and they go beyond the text, and they are meant to provoke discussion. So why does it matter? The so what? You analyze and apply concepts or ideas beyond the situation. So these come from the idea of Cinderella. I could use Cinderella as my example to answer the question. So, does a woman's salvation always lie with a man? If I'm looking at Cinderella, I would cite evidence from Cinderella to help me answer this question. My claim or my thesis would have nothing to do with Cinderella, right? My answer wouldn't really have anything to do with Cinderella. But my evidence that I use to support that answer would. What does it mean to live happily ever after? Does it mean finding your true love and getting to become a queen or a princess? Does it mean learning to love the people that are sometimes hard to love, like her stepmother and her stepsisters? I don't know. And then the last question, does good always overcome evil? In Cinderella, yes, as long as you see the stepmother as evil and the stepsisters as evil. So these questions require you to have an answer of your own, one that is truly your own personal opinion. And then they require you to dive into the text to provide evidence, right? So does a woman's salvation always lie with a man? No. A woman's salvation is her own making, and it requires her to be willing to take a leap of faith and chase after something that she is dreaming or cares about, right? And then I cite evidence from the text. Cinderella tries to make her own ball gown. She goes to the ball, right, with the help of a fairy godmother. She doesn't necessarily find her salvation there, and maybe at the end she does find her salvation with a man, but it doesn't mean that she wasn't attempting to create her own salvation, right? So I'm using Cinderella as my evidence to discuss this open-ended question. You'll notice that none of these questions are, what if the fairy godmother had never shown up and granted Cinderella her wish? Well, that's a what if question that doesn't allow us the opportunity to dive deeper into the text. So you have to ask yourself when you're creating these level 1, 2, and 3 questions is, does this depend on the text in order to be answered, or am I kind of speculating? The land of speculation is no good for discussions because they take us out of the text. So the last question is why? What is the purpose of designing questions of different levels? And you can think about that as you go forth and make lots of your own questions. But remember, the real purpose is that we are dependent on the text in our analysis, and that we are creating questions that help us get to a deeper meaning. So good luck as you go forth and make lots of good questions.